time for yet another update on Tesla. Take a look at this. This is a whole lot of text. Don't worry, we're gonna break it down and make sense of all of this. But basically, Tesla has some serious work to do because not only is Elon Musk now thinking about launching his own political party, which obviously isn't going to get enough mainstream votes to be large enough as a Democratic or Republican party, but that's actually not his intention. He's astute enough to realize that. What is Tesla facing in the next 6 months that maybe kind of flew under the radar in this big, beautiful bill? Well, it has to do with the elimination of the zero emission vehicle credits. So under the Congressional Review Act on May 22nd, the federal government limited states from imposing their own emission standards. On top of that, the monetary penalty for producing too many gas combustion vehicles versus electric vehicles is getting set to 0 upon the signing of the big, beautiful bill. Now, that's a whole lot of talk there and a lot of confusion that's going to go around that unless we break that down even more. So let's put it this way. On page 159 of the big, beautiful bill, corporate average fuel economy penalties are being reduced to $0, and they're being reduced to $0 as soon as the act is signed. So two big things just happened. Number one, Congress said states can't do their own regulations on emissions, like requiring electric vehicles or incentivizing zero emission vehicles through some form of credit program. The federal government is also removing the fines for not producing a high enough percentage of electric vehicles, which typically companies like Ford and GM would end up having to pay fines unless they bought excess zero emission credits from another company, like Tesla. Right here at the top, you can see automotive regulatory credits. Tesla's automotive regular credits have bounced between $442 million in Q1 of last year to $890 million in Q2, $739 million in Q3, $692 million in Q4, and $595 million in Q1. Now, Q1 2025 was particularly tough for Tesla because it was a quarter we only delivered 336,000 vehicles. That's compared to the 384,000 vehicles that we just delivered in Q2. And when we come down to look at Tesla's actual operating margin, they only brought in $399 million of operating margin. And since automotive credits are basically free money for Tesla with essentially no margin cost, Tesla collected over $590 million of zero expense money. In other words, if it weren't for these credits, Tesla would have had negative operating earnings in Q1. Now that may not matter because there's so much hope on electric vehicles becoming the autonomous vehicles of the future. That's exactly what Barclays writes as well, that any kind of negative volume concerns are being overshadowed by the autonomous vehicle narrative, which is great for Tesla, but it does create some potential for a V-shaped collapse in earnings per share. Now why that matters? Well, if we have a V-shaped collapse, in other words, a collapse and then a recovery, which I would expect because you'd get growth off of a low number. Once these ZEV credits go away, Tesla's earnings per share are likely to fall substantially, potentially briefly into a negative period, and then recover from there. But during that process, Tesla's PE ratio is going to look even more sky high than the 186 PE ratio it has now on the forward 12-month. And their PEG ratio is going to look even more high relative to or even higher relative to the 4x PEG ratio that they have now, which is also probably 2 times what it should be. So that said, it's likely that come the third quarter is probably going to be our first full quarter without these zero emission vehicle credits, since the bill is being signed on July 4th and the third quarter just began. Happy Independence Day. Happy July, Q3, by the way. We got a big house hack update coming out soon, by the way. Give us about 2 weeks. We just got to get the board to approve some of these announcements that we're making before we actually make them, and they're pretty huge, so pretty exciting. But anyway, Q3, so happy Q3. Q3 will probably be the first full quarter without the ZEV credits. The CRA review was May 22nd, so that was a month and a half ago. But the ZEV credit penalty going to 0 effectively making those ZEV credits near worthless. Probably won't be seen fully until Q3 this quarter. So, we'll get those numbers in October of this year. That's going to suck. But Q3 is going to be buffered by the fact that in Q3 we have the pull forward of these expiring tax credits, the $7,500 vehicle tax credit. So even though Q3 is going to suck with ZEV credits, we're going to pull forward demand for cars, people who want Teslas and want that $7,500 credit or $4,000 for a used car. That expires September 30th, which is the end of Q3. That means Q4 is going to be the first full quarter where you have no ZEV credits and you're following a pull forward quarter. That sucks. So Q4 is going to suck, but we don't actually get that data until January of 2026, which means absent some form of explosive success on Optimus or Robotaxi or an introduced cheaper Model 2 or Model Q or whatever you want to call it, I think markets are going to start pricing in some pain between now and January of 2026. That said, it could be a big buying opportunity because Tesla's going to have to go through this credit removal ban, like removing that sort of bandage or crutch, which Elon's always expected that eventually they would go through. So I don't think there's really a Tesla investor who's like, oh no, we're going to lose our free government money. It's just more going to be like this period of time that you kind of have to get through. And again, I don't think we're going to have Optimus success, like huge Optimus success within, this year here. But any kind of expansion of Robotaxi would be great, or the introduction of a Model 2. Now, personally, and I've been saying this for a while, but I kind of think we should be going to getting as many ADAS vehicles on the road as possible. And that's actually a method that BYD uses right now. They give away their ADAS software, their self-driving software, for free. And Mexico is now outpacing Chinese imports relative to U.S. imports of vehicles, according to CNBC here, despite the fact that we have a USMCA agreement, a trade agreement with Mexico, which is crazy and sort of doubles down on this idea that we'd probably all be driving Chinese vehicles if it were possible. That said, I have to say some of the BYD self-driving footage is really, really impressive. Here's an example where a car passes it on the left and the car nicely slows and stops in the middle of the intersection, which is remarkable. I mean, Teslas will do this as well. I'm more just trying to point out like this has already caught up in some regards. This seems to be a vlogger who's posting this video. There were a lot of like edited and sponsored videos that I didn't want to post. By the way, I love that they have this permanent digital mirror right here. I have the Cybertruck. The mirror is totally worthless. And even though, yes, I could get the rear view mirror on the center console, you have to remember, like, that takes effort to pull it up and set it up. And sometimes when I'm in the middle of driving, I just want to see the traffic behind me. Like if traffic in front of me is slamming on the brakes and I'm driving, I like to be able to look behind me before I slam on the brakes, even sometimes with autopilot. Of course, I could use the side mirrors to do that, but it doesn't help me if there's like a motorcycle right in between, right? So I do think this is really cool, but it doesn't surprise me that Elon doesn't have a digital mirror like this because margins, baby. That said, you can clearly see this car is going to change lanes here by the indicator to the right. So it changes lanes. The fact that it doesn't get anywhere close to this fence, pretty impressive, and then moves over and does signal to move over again. This is pretty impressive for a BYD vehicle here. Now, they obviously sped this up a little bit. You've got some crazy intersection that just occurred there. You've got lane changes. I mean, some of the footage that we were just scrolling through on our live stream was very impressive that we saw with BYD. And BYD, mind you, also introduces LiDAR-based technology on some of their newer models. They launched their LiDAR technology not at the start of their operations of ADAS, which they give away for free, but actually in 24, just in August. And they introduced this vehicle at just $24,000 US, which is pretty remarkable. And it explains a lot of this expansion you're seeing of BYD globally, whether it's Brazil, whether it's Mexico, whether it's Europe, or obviously China, where Tesla is, we finally got back to growth, but we're still losing share. So it's kind of impressive, and I think this BYD approach is really smart. I wish that Tesla would take the approach of just throw the ADAS in for free and get more miles, get more training, get more technology, incentivize people to buy the car, get those vehicle deliveries up. That would be absolutely amazing in my opinion. But then again, just my opinion. So my hope is that in addition to getting more of an ADAS expansion for Tesla, we also get some kind of actual Model 2. Everybody keeps talking about this line that Tesla puts in their earnings calls, and I cover this obviously in detail about, we're going to launch more affordable vehicles in 2025. I believe, I hope I'm wrong, but I believe all they're talking about are more affordable Cybertrucks, more affordable Model 3s, and more affordable Model Ys. I think Elon has a really big stubbornness against changing the lines, the manufacturing lines, to introducing a new model. And it's probably because he kind of got burned on the Cybertruck. I love the Cybertruck. I'm not here to poop on the Cybertruck, but let's just face it, sales are not good for the Cybertruck. Elon Musk is also very pissed, obviously, about Donald Trump. But in this Donald Trump piece in the Wall Street Journal, where they say things like Elon saying, what good is Doge saving $160 billion when the debt ceiling is increased by $5 trillion? In that same piece, the Wall Street Journal quotes a BBC interview with one of Elon Musk's ex-wives. And that interview talks about how Elon is actually a very emotional person. What they say is the following. They say he feels with incredible purity the emotion that he is feeling at the time, whatever the emotion is. He feels things very deeply. I've heard it said that he's cold and emotionless, and that could not be further from the truth. He's the most emotional person I know. I think also that emotion can make him very stubborn against the Model 2. Remember, Tesla's board of directors wanted a Model 2. Elon shut it down. I don't know if that will ever change. I hope it does, because I think it'll be a catalyst that you kind of need when things get a little tougher in the second half of the year. That said, it's also worth paying attention to this. Elon Musk is not talking about taking over an entire political party like the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. Instead, he's talking about being laser focused on just 2 or 3 Senate seats or 8 to 10 House districts. This makes sense. It would give them the power to sort of be like the Joe Manchin, Kyrsten Sinema, and take control of whether policy is able to pass on a margin or not, basically force more bipartisanship. Will he be able to bankroll enough of those districts to pull that off and actually get like in the middle people? I don't know, but we'll see. We will see. So, I'm optimistic and I'm hopeful, but I also recognize there are definitely headwinds coming for Tesla, and probably also just headwinds coming with just tariff policy in general. And I think it's one of the reasons why we've been doing so much fundamental analysis on companies, frankly, like Symbotic, which, we've started talking about Symbotic here just this year. And we've been talking about how this company has a real potential to just keep exploding. I think its valuation's a little high right now on the robotics front, but the momentum has taken over at this point, and volumes are skyrocketing for this company. So I think it's going to be another one to pay attention to. That said, that's my take on what's going on with Tesla.
Why not advertise these things that you told us here? I feel like nobody else knows about this.
We'll try a little advertising and see how it goes.
Congratulations, man. You have done so much. People love you. People look up to you.
Kevin Paffrath there, financial analyst and YouTuber. Meet Kevin. Always great to get your take.